why should people consider land? It's almost a no risk way of getting into real estate, because once you have a really nice piece of real estate, piece of land that you have under contract, if anything goes wrong about that deal, you simply can pull the plug and can get out. You have no earnest money in it. You have no commitment in it. You can simply cancel it. We're just approaching everything completely different.
Jack, thank you for joining me on our Thought Leader Spotlight series. I'm your host over here, head of partnerships at DealMachine, Matt Camp. And on these, we really like to shine a spotlight on industry experts like yourself, hear your inspiring stories and see how you see the real estate world evolving. So today, really excited to welcome back on Jack Bosch. It's been, literally years since we had you on. So excited to get the update. I think it's a whole new refresh on your take on real estate here as well. We've got an audience that like I mentioned before, more and more interested in land as well. So I'm really excited to have you back on. I know you and your wife have built a 7-figure land flipping business and did that in like 18 months to start off. So at this point, you have bought and sold over 4,500 pieces of real estate. You're the co-founders of Land Profit Generation, which is one of the top land investing education programs in the nation. You're a best-selling author, a podcast host. So Jack, welcome back on.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
So give us the update here. I know, it's, again, been years. So if you could kind of reiterate your journey on how you got here, and then even give us the recent update on what you've been up to the last couple of years too, that would be super helpful to kind of start off here.
Sure. Yes. You covered a lot already. So I'm originally from Germany, as you can tell from my accent. I came here to finish my college degree, met my wife here. She's an immigrant herself from Honduras, Central America. So we both decided to stay here, went through the legal process of 5.5 years of an H-1B visa, the green card, then became citizen. But somewhere along the way, early on, actually, within a couple of years, we realized that we really didn't enjoy that, being like the slave to the man in a way. Because particularly if you have an H-1B visa, you can't just quit your job and go somewhere else, because very few companies actually are willing to go through the effort of sponsoring that visa and going to the attorney fees and things and getting you that temporary work visa that you can over time turn into a green card. And so you basically are, as I figured out afterwards, you're underpaid. You are paid less. I wasn't complaining. I was doing okay, but you got paid less than other people. You work. You kind of like forced to work. I'm not forced, but I forced myself to work twice as hard to all kinds of different kind of situations. Like there was a dot-com bubble burst in the early 2000s, and the company I worked with was a software company. So they laid off 40% of their people, and they had 7,000 people. So they laid off 3,000 people in a matter of 3 days, spread over a year, one day. And if I would have lost the job, I would have lost my ability to stay in the country. So took this very, very seriously. And that drove us to really come up with a different plan for our life. So initially the plan was make a career, corporate America, work for 50 years, got a good school, got a good education, I got a master's, everything, go. And I was after 2 years, I was this is not it. So we looked around, and I spare you the details, but through a lot of trial and error and a lot of error and trial, right? A lot more failing forward, failing and trying different kind of stuff. We finally stumbled into this, at the time, absolutely, completely not known niche that we called it land flipping. So we coined the name in a way. Now everyone calls it land flipping, but we basically came up with a name, which is technically the wrong name, because flipping typically is fix and flip. But what we do with land is it's more like land wholesaling, land seller financing, land splitting, and now for the last few years, also land development. So what we come up with, a strategy that we basically mastered the strategy of finding people that don't want their land anymore. In the United States, there's over 46 million pieces of land. At any given time, 5% of those just don't want that land anymore. They're just the non-wanters. They're not even motivated seller. They're I've had this thing for 30 years. I've been paying property taxes for 30 years. I don't use it. It's getting on my nerves. It's paid full and clear. My kids don't want it. My grandkids don't want it. I couldn't care less. I just want it gone. And those people, they take discounts that are ridiculous compared to the house world. So we typically put these properties on a contract for anywhere between 20 and 60 cents on the dollar. And 60 cents is like, I mean, it's obviously like nobody's going to give you $1 million property for 10 grand, just to be clear, right? I'm not like sharing here some crazy, unbelievable kind of stuff. $1 million property, though, you can get for 600K, get it under contract, mark it up to 700K, marketed property, which is mostly what these sellers don't have a clue how to do, and realtors don't know how to do that for land either. And you market it properly and you sell it for 700 grand and you make 100 grand and a quick wholesale deal. Now, in a $30,000 property, those you can get for 10 cents on the dollar. Sometimes you get them for 3 grand, mark them up to 20, and wholesale it again and make a $16,000, $17,000 profit. So that's what we started doing first on the smaller kind of properties, like the $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 deals, then the $100,000 deals, then some larger deals. And then over the years, we've actually now, it's up to 5,000 deals that we have done by now. And we have and now we're working right now. I'm working on a 26-acre multifamily zoned property. It's already zoned for 574 apartment units that we are, when it's all said and done, might be making something like $6 million with a couple of partners. So we have to spread it a few ways. But that's the kind of deal that we're doing now. So the last development is that basically land, you can do this cookie cutter method. Get a $50,000 property for 15, sell it for 35, make 20 grand. Do that all day long without touching it, without seeing it, without ever meeting the seller in person, without ever meeting the buyer in person, without ever seeing the property virtually from home, from anywhere in the world. That's what we specialize in. That's our cookie cutter model. But there's so much more in land that you can do. You can land split, land develop, land subdivide, land rezone. You can entitle land. You can do all these different things in land that you can't do in the housing world. So really, once you get in and once you get hooked, there's about 16 different strategies in land that you can actually get excited about.
Wow. Yeah. Man, well, that's exciting how you guys have been one of the pioneers in that space, have evolved over time with it, and are obviously having success yourself, but also sharing that with our community and with so many other students too. So, I know for our community, I mentioned like, hey, as DealMachine has evolved, we've added data for all kinds of different property types, including land, and we're seeing a lot of people come to us for that now. I'd love to hear from you, because I know you've talked about there's a lot of misunderstandings around land as well. For that newbie who's like considering, hey, should I look at single family? Should I look at multifamily? Should I look at land? Should I look at, insert, asset type? What advice do you have for them there of why they should consider land? What misunderstandings might they have? Misconceptions might they have? Like, can you kind of address that person in our audience to start off with?
Absolutely. I like to. I even had a T-shirt somewhere that says "No tenants, toilets, and termites." So the first thing is I like to say land is the biggest misconception about land is that land is slow, expensive, and risky. That is actually true for the downtown $10 million development lot that you want to put a $200 million high rise on it. And if you buy that and you have to deal with the city and with the planning and the zoning and all this kind of back and forth, it takes years to get it all approved. Then you build that thing up, and when it's ready, the next recession hit and you lose it all, right? That stuff is all. These are the horror stories we hear about when people say, "Oh, stay away from land. Land doesn't cash flow. Land just costs your property taxes. Land is a hassle. Land is an albatross. Blah 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 blah." You hear all this kind of stuff, but that's not what we're doing. Right? So just make sure that land, it doesn't equal land. Just like in the house world, you can do wholesaling, you can do fix and flipping, you can do the BRRRR method, you can do Airbnbs, you can do whatever, all these different things you can do in the house space. What the downside of houses is that it all comes with walls, with electricity, with thing like we have a multifamily property that we had a bad electrician that did some work, and now the city's on us, and we have to fix stuff, and we have to literally spend $150,000 more than we thought we had to spend on that kind of property. That's hassles. When you do land the right way, what you do is you find the people who don't want these properties anymore. Again, 5% are looking to that. You get them on a contract. If you're doing it our way, what we do is we actually don't even put earnest money deposits down. We have a contract that's valid for 6 months. We have also there's a clause in the contract that allows us to back out of the contract anytime for any reason. So what that means is that it's almost a no risk way of getting into real estate, because once you have a really nice piece of real estate, piece of land that you have under contract, and again, we're dealing with three kinds of properties. I'll cover that in a second. But once you have it under contract, if anything goes wrong about that deal, you simply can pull the plug and can get out. You have no earnest money in it. You have no commitment in it. You can simply cancel it. Well, so to say like why should people consider land is that our perfect holding position is 0 days. So we're not getting stuck with the land. We're just approaching everything completely different. So first of all, we don't go after the $10 million pieces of land. We're going after the $30,000 to about $1 million. And many of our students even reduce that. We have a coaching company now too. Reduce that to $30,000 to about $300,000. That's the sweet spot for most of our people. So you get a $150,000 property that you can put on a contract for $60,000, and then you put it on a contract, no earnest money deposit. You can back out anytime for any reason. You have it on a contract for 6 months. It's binding to the seller. You put it on the market for 110. It's just a bargain on the market. And what you do is you do a double closing where you have a contract with the seller for 60. You have a contract with the buyer for 110. The property's worth 150, and you give both agreements to the title company. Title company does all their work, but then the money comes from the buyer. The buyer sends in $110,000. The title company takes $2,000 for themselves and sends $60,000 to the seller, and the remaining $48,000 goes to you. You just made $48,000 without owning the property for more than 5 minutes, without using any of your money, without ever being stuck with the property, without ever even putting an earnest money deposit down. Now compare that to houses. You can do that with houses. You can do wholesale with houses and things like that. But you still need to get somebody to have boots on the ground to look at the house, to look at the repairs, to sit in the kitchen table, to negotiate, to do things like that, to see how much does it cost to rehab the kitchen, rehab the bathroom. Does it need a new roof? Does it have electrical problems? And we don't have to do any of that. We literally do this from anywhere in the world. We got a student that does 300 deals a year, and he lives in Spain. Wow. And he comes over a couple of times a year to meet with a couple of people and so on. But other than that, he does 300 deals a year from Spain in the United States without really without ever having to be here. We have a guy. One of our coaches is in Colombia, is in Medellin, Colombia, and is married there. Has 2 kids. He's American, but his wife is Colombian, so they live over there. And he does like his 30 to 50 deals a year in the U.S. without ever seeing a single property of them. So again, think of land in a different way as an asset class that's actually simpler, that you can get much steeper discounts, that you can sell online, that you don't have to meet buyers and show them through. You don't have to stage it. You don't have to do any of these things. You're not dealing with tenants, toilets, and termites. No contractors, no repairs, none of that stuff. It's simply a nice piece of land that you get a substantial discount, mark it up a little bit, and wholesale. Or you can also get cash flow from land by selling it with seller financing. And the 3 kinds of land that we focus on is infill lots, like lots in the city, path of growth, lots of round pieces of land around the city, and larger acreage, what I call mini ranches. They're in high demand. They're in that price range of $30,000 to $300 or $1 million, and lots of people want them. And you can get them, and there's millions of them out there. And as I said, there's 46 million pieces of land at any given time, 5%. So there's 2.3 million pieces of land where the owners simply say, I don't care, I don't want it. So it's a open market. It's an easy to tap in market. It's a low complexity market because all you need to figure out is how much is this property worth. So valuation is important, but you don't ever have to see the property. You can go and look at that property through aerial pictures. Like the last time I've seen any of my properties in person was 2007. So that's literally 17 years ago, 18 years ago is the last time I've seen any of my properties in person, or any of the properties that I've flipped in person. Because Google Maps, Google Earth, Google Street View county geographical information systems. You have an abundance, and there's even online services now. They have an abundance of satellite data and street view data that gives you it shows you every detail of the property that you need to see without ever having to actually leave your living room.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, in DealMachine, you're getting like 700 plus data points around any piece of property, whether it be land or a house or anything. So, that's why we're getting a lot of people coming to us. So,
but if you have a data like a service like DealMachine, you can probably get maps from you guys. You can go see the properties. I mean, everything is at your fingertips. The reason why I stopped looking at them in 2007 is because Google Maps was finally around. We started this in 2002 when we had MapQuest. Smartphones did not exist yet at the time. We literally had to go put a laptop on our lap, put a GPS into the windshield, had it connected to the cigarette lighter in the car, and had to find our way to these properties because otherwise we couldn't see anything. Today, everything is on your fingertips. And again, and that makes land so much easier than houses. Plus, even after us teaching this now for 15 years and having created 1,000 millionaires with this already, the ratio of land investors to house flippers is still 100 to 1 or 1 to 100. One land flipper for every 100 plus house flippers out there. So we're still dealing with like a fraction of the competition.
Yeah. Do you, as you kind of talk through, I mean, there's so many different exit strategies, like you said, even for land and, obviously like knowing the value of a piece of land is going to be a big part of the process of coming to that offer amount. And I know you guys teach that within like Land Profit Generator as well, but is there anything you can share with our audience on how to assess the value of that land, how to know what a good deal looks like? Like, do you have any advice there, especially for somebody who's like newer getting into this?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically we like to sell these properties one of two ways. The first way I already explained is the wholesaling. Just mark it up a little bit, sell it again at a bargain. The second way is when we get seller financing, and it ties into your question. So the second way is when we sell it with seller financing. So when do we do what? And what is seller financing? Seller financing is very simply is the equivalent of your 16-year-old kid wants a car, and you're like, I'm not giving you a car. And they go to Uncle Bob. Uncle Bob has an old car in the garage, and it's worth 10 grand. And the kid says, hey, Uncle Bob, can I buy your car? And Uncle Bob says, yeah, it's worth 10 grand. And the kid says, I don't have 10 grand, but I have $1,000. Can I pay down, or $2,000? I have $2,000. Can I pay to give you $2,000 as a down payment? And then would you allow me to pay the remaining $8,000 in monthly payments of $300? I got a job at different at Chick-fil-A or whatever it is, and I'm making money now, and I pay you $300 a month until this is paid off. And Uncle Bob says, yeah, sure, but because I have to wait for my $8,000, I'm going to have to charge you some interest on that money. And it's like, okay, so they write up a contract. They calculate what the interest is, what the monthly principal and interest, and the little 16-year-old gets the car, drives away with it, and now every month pays Uncle Bob $300. The exact same thing we can do with land. So when you get a piece of land that's worth $50,000 and you get a particularly good bargain at, like, say, at 10 grand, which happens quite a bit actually, then this is a perfect deal that you now turn around and sell for $50,000. You mark it up all the way to market value, which usually means it sits on the market for a while. But in this case, you go like, hey, but I have a caveat. You don't have to pay me $50,000. I'm like Uncle Bob. I will allow you to pay me down $10,000 and then do monthly payments of $500 with interest until it's paid off. So in that scenario, what happens is that the down payment is equal to what you have to pay the seller. So again, a cashless transaction. You have the seller pay you $10,000. You pass it on you have the buyer pay you $10,000. Sorry, repeat. Right? You have the buyer pay you $10,000. You pass that $10,000 to the seller. You just bought and sold the property using none of your money, but the buyer still owes you $40,000, which is documented with the principal and interest, and they pay you $500 a month for the next 15 years, and that's $6,000 a year in cash flow. So again, to your question, how do I know if it's a good deal? You got to get valuation right. So the way we value these properties, again, we have three kinds of properties. The properties in the city, think about infill lots, think about the street, 35 houses, 2 empty lots. The second kind of property is in the outskirts of town. Like you think about where the last development ends, the next kind of like 20, 30-minute drive or so, if it's a big city, is still the outskirts of town. And the third kind of property is like 10 plus acres, 20 acres, 40 acres, 100 acres, interesting for as a mini ranch. So the first kind of property is interesting for builders. They'll sell them to the builders. How do you value the properties of how do you figure out the value of a property in an infill situation? Usually the problem with those kind of properties is that there's 35 houses and there's only one empty lot. There's no comparables out there. So what you do is you do what an appraiser would do. You look at how much do the houses in the area sell? And typically when a house sells for, let's say, $500,000, 20 to 25% of that is actually the land value and the rest is the house value. Because when you buy a house, you're not just buying the house, you're buying the land with the house on top. So there's value in the land. So when you typically a neighborhood that's $400,000 or $500,000, the land is worth 20 to 25%. So about $100,000. Got your value. If I know that, I can now make a $60,000 offer, $70,000 offer, get it under contract, sell it to a builder the next day, made 30 grand on the deal. Yep. The second kind of property, the path of growth, it's a little different. In that case, you simply look for, and that's the beauty of it today, you pull up Zillow. You just go pull up Zillow, you select land only, and you see what has sold in the area. And chances are what you'll find is that if your property that you're interested in is a 5-acre property, there's probably 25 other 5-acre properties or 500 other 5-acre properties, of which 5 to 10 have sold in the last year. Well, if they all sold for $55,000 to $60,000, you got your market value. If they don't, you look at how much are they listed for. And if you see that they're listed for like $60,000, you subtract a little bit, accounting for the fact that if it's listed for 60, somebody's not going to just buy it for 60. They're going to offer a little less. So 10%, 15% less, you got your market value. Right? And in the more rural areas, what happens is the larger acreage, like the mini ranch, it's the same thing. You look at what has sold, what's listed. But sometimes what you happen is you have a 30-acre parcel and all you see is that 3 40-acre parcels sold and 3 20-acre parcels. So you got to adjust for the acreage. And there's one rule of thumb you want to remember in the rural areas or in the more outside of town, the larger the acreage, the lower the price per acre. So what you'll find is that 40 acres sold for $100,000, 20 acres sold for $70,000. So what's your 30 acres worth? Probably like $85,000. Done, right? Based on that, you now offer anywhere between like 20 and 60 cents on the dollar. And that is a sliding scale that we use. The higher the property value, the higher the percentage. So on $1 million property, we're probably going to offer 65% or so. On a $10,000 property, we're probably going to offer 10%. All right. So, and that's when you do, and that simply allows you to keep a margin because very simply, you can't afford to buy a $10,000 property for $6,500 because you're going to sell it for $7,000 and you're going to make what? $300? That's not worth it. So if it's a $10,000 property, you want to buy it at $1,000 or put it on a contract at $1,000 so that when you sell it for $7,000 minus closing costs, you're still making $5,000. That's what most people make in a job. Now, a $1 million property, you can afford to put it on a contract for $650,000, 65 cents on the dollar, because you might put it on the market for $720 and make $70,000, even though it was only a 10% markup of what you got it for. Does it make sense? So you kind of keep those things in mind, and we obviously teach all of that in detail, but that's kind of how you figure out what the property is. And now comes the decision of like wholesaling or self-financing. If I get $1 million property for $650,000, I'm going to wholesale it. Because if I want to self-finance it, I'm going to mark it up to $1 million. Most people only want to give me $100,000 down payment. Well, where do the other $550,000 come from?
Right.
You got a gap, right? But if I get a $50,000 for $50,000 property for $10,000, that's a perfect example of a self-financing deal. Because I get it so cheap that the down payment that I'll get when I sell it probably is already equal to higher than what I actually can get for the property. Like my daughter, my 17-year-old daughter, last year when she was still 16, she did her first land deal. Mm-hmm. And she bought a property for $6,000 and sold it for $40,000. with a $15,000 down payment. So she used the realtor on the selling side. So the realtor got 10%. So bought it for 6 or put it on a contract for 6, sold it for 40 and got a $15,000 down payment. So the realtor got $4,000. So she was left with 11. The seller needed to get 6. So the seller got 6. So she was left with 5. And the title company got 1,000. So she was left with $4,000. But the point is, this was such a smoking deal that out of that deal, she walked away with, she put zero of her own money into the deal. She walked away with $4,000 cash in her pocket. And now she's getting $500 a month for the next 8 years. And the total proceeds of that deal is going to be $48,000 and $38,000 profit for her.
Wow.
Pretty good deal for a pretty good deal for a 16-year-old.
No kidding. That's an awesome breakdown, Jack. I really appreciate you kind of walking through each different scenario. I mean, I had one follow-up to that, and I know we're running out of time here, so I don't want to go too long on you, but one follow-up to that on the exit side. So when you're thinking through, like, how do I find somebody who's going to, that B2C contract, that buyer's list, that who you're flipping it to, do you have any advice there on finding those folks, whether it be the builders or these different groups that you kind of broke down for us?
Yeah, very quickly, since we're running out of time. Builders, easiest. Google the city that's closest to the property or that's in that property is in, and add to the word Home Builders Association. What comes up? Every bigger city has a Home Builders Association. There's a directory in there, usually free to access. Right there's all your builders. Just pick up the phone, call 5 of them. Somebody will buy the property. Path of growth, it's a different kind of thing. When you're there, you're typically selling to an end buyer. Somebody that wants to go build a house, somebody that wants to have 5 acres and not live in the city, but live close to the city. A future retiree that needs to live a little low-cost life, wants a piece of land, put a mobile home on there. So you go, typically, realtors are really good to sell those. They used to suck 5 years ago, but they have learned. They're really learning these days. Realtors are getting better and better and better on marketing land. And so as a result, you find the best land realtor in the area. You go on Zillow, look at a bunch of listings and find a realtor that is like the number one land representative in that area. And that usually is a guy that has a list of buyers already. And like my daughter, she found the top realtor in the area. Within 3 days, she had multiple offers on that deal. And so you can do, realtors are really good. Other than that, you can use websites like landwatch.com to put their properties on. Facebook Marketplace works very well. Sometimes you get hundreds of inquiries from end buyers about these properties. But more important than where is how you list it. And the key is with land, you can't just put a satellite picture, a 2-liner. You sell land by describing what you can do with the land and what is around the land. Like somebody wants to retire on a piece of land because they haven't, like somebody has is in their 50s, doesn't have much retirement funds, realizes that when retirement comes around, they're not going to be able to retire in the city because rents are $2,000 and they're only getting $1,600 in Social Security. So they're going to go buy a piece of land half an hour outside of town with utilities and stuff because they have to retire in a low-cost way. They want to pay this off over the next 10 years in monthly payments, then at the end put a mobile home on there, and then have a dignified retirement. Well, guess what? That person doesn't care if that property has 3 trees on it or 17 trees on it, or if it has views or doesn't have views. What they care about is, how far away am I from groceries? How far away am I from the city? How far away am I from a church? How far away am I from a doctor? How far away am I from some entertainment? Because they're not moving out because they want to. They're moving out because they don't have another choice. So they're like, you sell that property by saying like, listen, these 2 acres is perfectly buildable, has utilities and so on. But most importantly, you're in 10 minutes, you're over in this little town where you can do groceries. You're only 5 minutes away from the interstate, brings you back into town to see your friends. You're only 10 minutes away from hiking, biking, and kind of things. And they're like, great, this is the perfect retirement spot. I can retire in dignity, but I can still be close to everything. Mm-hmm. The land barely even matters. As long as it checks the base qualifications that they're looking for, they're ready to buy that piece of land. What they want to know is like, can I still have a life while I'm out there? Right. Yep. So it's a different approach, and most realtors don't understand that. But once you get that approach, your properties sell like hotcakes.
Yep. So understanding who your end buyer is and put yourself in their shoes and paint that picture for them of what they're buying, not just the land, but the life they're buying with it, right? The
Exactly right.
opportunity they're buying with it. So, okay,
Yeah.
man, we'll have to have you back on in more than than once every few years. Like this was great. So, yeah, Jack,
Happy to come back.
Yeah, really appreciate you, man. Thank you for sharing all this with our community. How can our audience best get in touch with you? I know you have that 30-day blueprint you mentioned as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to Land Profit Fun, like fun, like FUN, like having fun, having fun. So landprofitfun.com, and right there you can go and you can download a 30-day blueprint, which is exactly what it says. It's a 30-day land flipping blueprint that shows you exactly how to set up your business and how to get to your first deal within the next 30 days. It's 100% for free. And then obviously you can check me out on YouTube, Jack Bosch. There's a 7 days of land flipping series that takes like 10, 15-minute videos that explain also how this works. We sometimes do free kind of challenges, so make sure you check us out under different kind of places. And I'm on social media too, and I have my own podcast called The Jack Bosch Show.
Fantastic. We'll link to all that below. I know if you're a DealMachine customer or if you're starting your free trial, definitely look at our land filters. We've got vacant land as an option on there. And then if you just click on the more button on the top right-hand side of that search filter, just search by land and you've got a ton of different criteria you can start digging into. So would recommend pairing this advice with that and good luck, out there finding deals. So Jack, again, really appreciate your time. Enjoyed the conversation, man.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. And then I agree, you guys don't, to the audience, you guys don't understand how simpler that is today than it was back then. Even 7-8 years ago, nobody had land data online. We had to get all this data from the counties and process it ourselves or send it out there. Now it's like at your fingertips through a service like DealMachine. So love it.
There we go. Yeah, we're definitely an advantage of when you did the hard way. So love to be able to help people this way. But to everyone watching, again, this is Matt Camp over here with DealMachine, and happy deal finding.